Lovely. Thank you very much, Frankie, and thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for everybody who's going to be watching this on recording. So I am Sally Bate. I used to work for the Gardens Trust as a permanent member of staff. I am now a project support volunteer officer, so I am supporting the Green Futures project. So you're all very welcome, as are the people who perhaps are tuning in because they fancy doing some research in another part of the country. So this webinar aims to give you an overview of how and where to research a park or garden or another type of designed landscape. It is a combination of two previous training webinars, so there's a lot of information coming your way. I haven't been able to go into quite so much detail as I have done in the past, but it's slightly more up-to-date information, and we will send you the links to those previous emails. So if you want to go through something a little bit more slowly, and I can do screen by screen, click by click, then it'll be there for you. So if you're new to researching, don't worry, there'll be lots of help coming your way, and we are always here to support you if you still get stuck. So please don't feel you have to write lots of notes, because we will be sending out slides and my transcript so that you can look at it at your, or if you can zoom forward to one particular bit you wanted to have a look at again or to remind yourself. So just sit back, enjoy a bit of garden research, a bit of detective work, and we will get started. Okay. So you have identified a designed landscape that you would like to find out more about. But do you start by visiting it and exploring every nook and cranny, making notes or taking photographs? Or do you look online and in libraries and archives for any information about the site and the people who lived there or worked there? It's very tempting to do the former. However, we would always suggest that you should do as much information research as you can before you visit. Um, it's not only does it mean that you will fully understand the site before you visit, but also you will appear knowledgeable and very professional if you meet the owner or a manager. The fact that you are interested in your site may well mean that someone else has also been drawn to the site and to research it in the past. You don't want to spend hours or days researching it, only to find that someone has already done it. If this is the case, you still may be able to add up-to-date information or still find new material. So the first place to look to see what is already known about your site is on Historic England's National Heritage List for England. As you can see from the menu here, they have a drop-down list. So when you search the map, you can sort of knock out the ones you don't want. So as you can see here, we've got listed buildings at the top. So that includes all standing structures, whether they're grand mansions or garden walls. There's scheduled monuments, which cover archaeological sites and ruins, and historically interesting areas such as deserted medieval villages. Many shipwrecks are protected, as are battlefield sites. And more recently, World Heritage sites have been added, along with areas of certificates of immunities and buildings with preservation notices. I don't know much about those, but we don't need to worry about those last few. To find out if your garden is on the National Heritage List, you just unselect all the ones you don't want, and then click to see what you can find. And this will show you, if you choose by county as well, all the landscapes which are graded 1, 2-star or 2 in your county. So the majority of the landscapes that are being researched as part of the Green Futures project are not on the Register of Parks and Gardens. But you can still use this search list to look for listed buildings and scheduled monuments on your site. If you're searching outside of England, you can look at these websites to help you discover what is already known about your landscape. So just a quick demonstration, I used the Search the Map facility to look at Rest Park in Bedfordshire. So we're looking at the map on the left here, and you can immediately see a green shaded area. This tells me that it is a park and garden on the register. And actually this one is grade 1. If I right click anywhere in the green shaded area, this box will come up and it tells you its official name. So a bit like racehorses, every landscape has its own unique name. It will tell you what grade it is, so it's grade 1. Its unique identifier number, which is that one what's it got? 7 digits. And then underneath, if you right click that view the list entry, it will take you to all the pages of information that Historic England hold about this park or garden. As you can see also on this map, we've got an area map outlined in red. Now that is not a conservation area, that is a scheduled monument area. And actually, if I click this aerial photograph here on the right, you can see that actually I've drawn a line around it. It actually includes the formal area of the garden. So they consider it so important that it's actually also a scheduled monument. Also on the map on the left, you can see lots of blue pins. These mark all the listed buildings and structures, and these include temples and statues at Rest Park. And you can click on each one of these pins to find out more about that particular item. So another website to search for information that's already known about your site is the Heritage Gateway. This website serves to draw together several databases, including the National Heritage List that we've just looked at. In order to search for our landscape on a Heritage Gateway, you can use a more detailed search facility highlighted here. Oops, go back. I've lost my place. You can use it highlighted. So you fill in the property name and you will get a drop-down list of suggestions, and you can scroll down that to find the one that you are looking for. So I've looked at the both options. You can have a list come up or you can have a map come up, as you can see here. So the Rest Park list on the left. At the top, we've got statutory data, and that takes you to 43 results. And they are actually all the things we've just seen on the heritage registered area map we looked at previously. So these will be the listed buildings, the scheduled monuments, and the park or garden designation. The green category underneath says national designation decisions. For this site, none are listed, but this section may include unsuccessful bids for listing or for listed buildings or an entry on the Parks and Gardens register. So someone's put it forward, but it's been considered not important enough to be listed. There might also be here an entry here if the site has become so degraded or completely lost that it no longer merits inclusion on the register. The mauve section in the middle is titled Non-Statutory National Data, and this just provides links to all other databases which have shared their entries. Here you can see there is one result for Parks and Gardens UK website and 20 results on the NMR Excavation Index. So, it could be interesting to look at those 20 results to see what's been found there. Of more interest to us is the orange section at the bottom titled Local Records. These records are those in the county's historic environment record, usually referred to as your county HER. So Bedfordshire HER has uploaded 165 records, and it is these that are shown on the orange map on the right. And interestingly, Bedfordshire HER has drawn a slightly larger area for Rest Park than Historic England's green area that we saw a moment ago. So anyone putting in a planning proposal should consult their county HER to find out information in order to be able to form a heritage impact statement. They have to prove that they've searched and they've looked to see what they need to be careful of or what they have to consider. Every county HER is different from the next. So I'm afraid you have to go in and have a little play and see, probably look for your own house and your own village first. I think everybody always does that, and see what they have got there for you. Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Essex HERs have uploaded their entries onto the Heritage Gateway database that we just looked at. So that's how you look for information for them. As you're not researching the HERs for professional purposes, there should not be a charge or less of a charge, but you may have to wait quite a while for a report, as the heritage officers are often understaffed and dealing with lots of inquiries. However, you may be able to see enough information without having to need to ask for a report. Herefordshire, Norfolk and Suffolk HERs have their own website and interactive maps, so you can have fun searching here for your park or garden. The Norfolk and Suffolk HERs are found on a site called the Norfolk or Suffolk Heritage Explorer website, as you can see here, and they are quite straightforward to use. So there may be other places holding information on your landscape. These are just a few of them. Parks and Gardens UK is a user-friendly website where you can search for gardens in your county and read about the different landscape and garden designers, as well as owners or garden styles. Your local county gardens trust may also have researched your site in the past, and many have produced books or gazetteers, or they may have an inventory of gardens on their website. If you can't find evidence of any of these, it may be worthwhile contacting your local County Gardens Trust to see if they have any information that can help you, or they might be able to help with contact details of the garden owners or managers. Village history groups, thematic history groups, or other organisations may hold information of interest to you or have published booklets and leaflets. Many of these organisations have a Facebook page. And actually, the latter, Facebook, is a good place to ask people for information or share a picture to get memories flowing. And you'll find you'll get all sorts of anecdotal evidence, but you may find some real jewels of information comes out of that. Just make sure you have permission to share whatever image it is you put up there. Garden history is a relatively new subject, and unless your park or garden is very well known, it's not likely that you will find a whole book on it. Research is published in many different formats these days, and we will have a look at some of these in a minute. Academic journals, such as the Garden Trust's Journal of Garden History, may also hold information on landscapes, garden styles, landscape designers, or owners. There is a contents index for this journal on the Gardens Trust website, which will help you track down the correct edition of the journal that you need to find. And then you might be able to find it on JSTOR if you have access to that. That's a sort of an academic online, or ask somebody who's got access, like myself, to have a look for you. The RHS Linley Library also have copies of our journal. And you might be able to order a back copy from the Gardens Trust if they're still available. Obviously, not all of them are. Other journals may be available to read online. And for example, the Georgian Group took lockdown a few years ago as an ideal opportunity to digitise all the back copies of their journal. And these can be searched and read for free on their website. And you may find other journals have been treated similarly. So increasingly over the past few years, researchers are publishing their work online on their own websites or via blogs like this one. So this one is by David Marsh, who has over 500 articles available to read on his garden history blog. You can search all his blog articles by name, site, owners, garden style, or feature using this search box at the top here. This is obviously a very good, and we would say this is a very what's the word I'm looking for? A reliable website, should we say. However, there are other well-researched sites out there, but you must keep an open mind about the veracity of the information on there. They might not be 100% accurate, or they may have been written from a particular point of view and be a bit biased. It may be that you cannot find any or very little information on your park or garden, and you need to go looking for information yourself. Sources of information fall mainly into two categories: primary and secondary. So primary sources are created at the time of history that they represent. So these include documents such as letters, diaries, account books, sale catalogues, for example, or images such as paintings, drawings, drawn plans, postcards, photographs, census returns. All these were created at the time that they are describing or showing. And although they might be biased in favour of their creator's view, they have not been interpreted by a second party. So secondary sources include subsequent books, magazines, blogs, websites, anything where a third party has been involved and has come in and perhaps not transcribed it correctly, or maybe has had a slightly different point of view. So just keep in mind, is it primary or is it secondary? Has somebody else altered it? Could they have altered it in any way? It is important to keep in the back of your mind the origin of the information you're looking at. So let's look at maps. So obviously for landscapes, maps are a huge source of information to garden detectives, and they do vary in quality and accuracy, from the very large scale ordnance survey maps to sketch plans drawn up to accompany wills or estate sales. Before I look at any maps, I familiarise myself with the landscape as it is today. I use Google Earth or another aerial photograph and a modern base map, such as the two examples we've got here. So this is Holywells Park. It's southeast of the centre of Ipswich. Ipswich Marina and the River Orwell can be seen far left. And the park is a green, tree-lined space surrounded by housing to the north, east, and south. There are light industrial units that occupy the space between the park and the quaysides. And you can just see running sort of diagonally across from the top to the middle of the right. You can see the Felixstowe and Nacton roads and the Eastern Park boundaries. And the boundaries are marked with sort of trees, thick tree belts. And you can see in the middle there, looks like there's a play area and some other features which you can't quite make out until you zoom in. But just get really familiar with your site and how it fits into its locality. So now that I'm familiar with it, it will make it much easier for me to recognise it on earlier maps. So the first resource that any garden researcher will go looking at is the National Library for Scotland website. Over the past decade or so, it has become the most useful resource. The site is constantly being updated and new maps are being added and new interactive features added all the time. The maps that garden historians use the most are the 25-inch OS maps, as they are larger scale and they show paths, buildings, and the bigger garden features. They date from the 1880s, and then the ones that are available might go right up to the middle of the 20th century. You can also look on this website at the 6-inch maps, and bigger if you want, but they don't have as much detail, the 6-inch maps, and they will date, but they could date from a couple of decades earlier than the 25-inch, so they might hold information that you haven't seen on the 25-inch maps. You can browse the maps in 3 different ways, as shown here. You can look at them as individual sheets. You can look at them as a seamless, zoomable overlay layer, which is always difficult to say, so I'm pleased I've done that. And where the earliest ones they have been stitched together in a seamless layer. Or you can look at this side-by-side map and aerial option. So I'm just briefly going to go through each option so you can see what to expect if you look at this site. So this is a detail of the 1884 25-inch map showing Holywells Park that we've just looked at in Ipswich. So many of the earlier OS maps will have some colour like this one. So obviously blue for water. You've got red for habitable buildings, grey for uninhabited buildings, and yellow for the public roads. We can see in this park there are areas of trees, and the ones over on the east side, you can see serpentine paths going through them. Right across the middle of this site, there is an extensive chain of different shaped water features, and the main residence is shown with other inhabited buildings to the south. It's marked Holywells in red, and you can see other red buildings to the south of it. And then there are some grey uninhabited buildings to the south of those. You could argue that maps like this are a primary resource because they were surveyed and drawn up at the time. You just have to keep in the back of your mind that they might not be 100% reliable because it was very much down to the Ordnance Survey surveyor and what and how they showed the information and how they recorded it. So just occasionally you find evidence which disagrees with a map. It's rare, but it does happen. However, they are the most accurate maps that we have from the 19th century. The Scottish Library website has very nearly a map sheet to view for every square on the national grid. Sometimes there's even more than one option, and particularly in built-up areas, you may be able to look at the changes shown by maps from the 1880s, the 1900s, the 1920s, right up to the 1940s. So you may just have one map, or you may have up to 4 that you can have a look at for the same map sheet. So the seamless zoomable overlayer is very useful for large parks or for those which fall near the edge of an individual map sheet. This is Holcombe Park in the North Norfolk, and it is made up of the earliest 25-inch maps available on the website. If I put the grids in, you can see that it actually covers, well, 6 and tiny bit to the left as well, but 6 map sheets. You can spend a lot of time exploring this option if you decide to look at a seamless overlayer, because you can select from the menu at the top of the page which of the other things you would like to compare with the map that you're looking at. So you might choose a modern map, you might choose an aerial photograph, or you might choose a LiDAR image, and I'll talk about those later, to put underneath this Victorian map that I'm looking at here. In the bottom layer of the page, there is this transparency slider, and that means you can toggle backwards and forwards between the map and whatever you've chosen to put underneath it. So it's a really good way of comparing perhaps images from today with what the maps looked like then. So it's a really useful feature that they have put on in not that long ago. The third option on the 25-inch map homepage is this side-by-side map and aerial photo layers. This is useful if you're trying to pinpoint features in perhaps dense woodland or where there's been a lot of change in the intervening period. So this landscape on the left is a place called Marshall's in Romford. It's a very small landscape park around a Georgian house, and the house was demolished in the 1950s. And the parkland is now under extensive housing developments that's seen here on the right. There's also a school on the site of the house. So how it works is wherever I put the cursor on the map on the left, you will see the cross come up on the aerial photograph on the right. So again, very helpful for pinpointing things, especially if you're aiming to go looking for them. You know, it gives you an idea of what you might see when you get onto the ground. And since the last time we presented our research webinars, the National Library of Scotland has uploaded another layer of maps that you can search, and these are the 1870s large-scale town maps. So these were not drawn up across the whole country, or even all of the larger settlements, but they were commissioned by some town and city corporations. These are not going to be so useful for the Green Future project sites, but because they're urban maps, but they are really useful if you are researching in these settlements. What I've put here are the lists of the map sheets that are available to view in the 6 eastern counties that the Green Future project covers. So there's quite a lot there to see. And I'm just going to show you one so you can see the detail that you get on these maps. This is the southern half of quite a big garden in the 19th century belonging to Amwell House in Ware in Hertfordshire. So the actual house building is now a college and it's up. You can't see it, it's off the map to the top right. You can see here lovely details of those paths snaking their way through the trees on the left of the image. And you can see there's shrub planting going on as well. You've got steps shown and seats. And at the end of some of the avenues, you've got something to catch your attention. And even smaller features like urns and fountains and rockeries can be found on maps like this. So I chose this map because it looks really interesting. We've got what looks like a glass house on the right side of the road, and those marked features, those 3 areas, probably a kitchen garden, I'm guessing. So it would be at the bottom of this wooded area you could walk to. But also I chose it because on the other side of the road is a really interesting looking garden. You can see there's an octagonal building on the left here with sort of double steps going up to the back of it. Next to it, there's a round building, and there's a T-shaped building next to that with some sort of path that comes in at the back. And of course, this is a research rabbit hole that I fell down. Not proud to say I'll do this regularly. I was very intrigued to find out what this was and is there any evidence if it's still there today. So I had a look on the Hertfordshire HER to see what it was, and it turns out it's a very rare survival of a garden which is now in a heavily developed area of housing. So it is still there. And if you live near Ware and you would like to go and visit it, the Friends of the Scots Grotto, which is what that T-shaped building is, do open the garden a few times a year. They have a website so you can have a look. And I think next time I'm passing that way at the right time of year, I shall be very tempted to go and have a look. But you can see the detail on these maps are wonderful. So earlier than the 1800s, 25-inch maps that we've been looking at, there are Ordnance Survey drawings. So these are the actual drawings that the surveyors drew up when they were commissioned by the government. This was done in response to the Napoleonic Wars and the threat of invasion. The coastal areas of England facing the continent were mapped first, and then gradually the southern half of the England. It's a sort of line from the Bristol Channel up to the Humber Estuary. It's a sort of anything south of there were surveyed. And these drawings are available to have a look at. And they do sometimes show you different features and different land, the way the land is laid out from the later Ordnance Survey maps. Up until March 2024, these drawings were all available to view on the British Library website. But as many of you will have heard, there was a devastating cyber attack on the British Library, and its website, catalogue, and online exhibits such as these drawings fell victims. I hope they're going to be back up there soon. They seem to be getting more and more seems to be coming back online. They may even be back on since I researched for this talk. But I did find copies of a lot of them on a Wikimedia Commons website. I think the BL must have put them there. And they do let you zoom right in. So if you go looking on Wikimedia Commons, you should hopefully be able to find the drawing that covers the area you're interested in. They are smaller scale than the 25-inch map, so you won't see quite as many details, but they do show you information from the sort of earlier and middle part of the 19th century. So this example here that I've chosen on the right is a detail from the Fakenham drawing in North Norfolk. It shows the earlier size of the park at Melton Constable Hall. And this was drawn up 60 years after Capability Brown visited and had worked on the site. And so in the later 19th century, the park expanded. And this outline of the park in the size that it was after Brown finished working there is not shown on any other plan or map. So actually, this was really important to the research we were doing a few years ago. So really, hopefully, all the drawings will be back on the British Library website very soon. Now, this is one of the tithe maps. I expect you've heard about tithe maps. It's the same park. It's Melton Constable Park. It shows the lie of the land 34 years after the Ordnance Survey drawing we've just seen. So see, the park has changed a bit. It looks different. There is a ha-ha. It's that curved line towards the top. It's got a path running around the outside of it. It's going around the hall and the sort of formal gardens at the front and the pleasure gardens on one side. And the ha-ha is obviously keeping the deer out of the wider park. You can also see a more detailed shape of this lake. I always think it looks a bit like an amoeba with an island. And also you can see this sort of tree planting where it's been going on. There's belts of trees have been planted, probably suggested by Brown, and clumps of trees have been shown as well. So tithe maps date from the middle of the 19th century. They can be viewed in county archives or through the genealogists' websites, although, of course, the latter does require payment. So if you want to see them for free, go into your local record office or your heritage centre. Before 1836, tithes were paid to the church. It was a tenth of your produce from the land. So it could be a tenth of your crops, animals, timber, fish, etc., whatever people felt they could spare. After 1836 and the Act for the Computation of Tithes in England and Wales, this meant that parishes were responsible for working out the monetary value of that each householder was due to pay. Therefore, the parish tithe maps were drawn up to determine the amount of rent payable from each parcel of land in the parish, whether it held a dwelling or another sort of building, or it was just the land itself. And then what they have with them is the accompanying apportionment document, which will tell you the size of every parcel of land, who owned it, and who lived on it or worked it if it was not the owner themselves. So there's quite a lot of information there, and you probably can just make out that every parcel on this tithe map here has got a number, and that will link up with your apportionment document. So lots of information to see there from the sort of early to middle of the 19th century. Slightly earlier than the tithe maps are the enclosure maps from the early 19th century, although not every parish commissioned an enclosure map. Enclosure maps are larger scale and mainly of rural areas. And as I said, not every parish has one. They are accompanied, if you do have one, by the Enclosure Awards. These are legal documents which are created to record redistribution or reorganisation of land. They provided legal proof of historical ownership and the boundaries of landholding, so not quite as useful to us as they are larger scale. This example is the 1815 enclosure map for the area to the south of central Bury St Edmunds. Not many landscape features are shown, except I was intrigued in the bottom left-hand corner by that square bounded by a double row of trees. So I had a look on the 1880s 25-inch map to see if it was still visible, and it was. It was a heavily treed area of Hardwick Park, and it was just marked as the square on the sites, and there were paths shown all the way around it. So I thought, right, is it still there today? And I had a look on the aerial photographs, and you still can make out this square. It's in amongst quite dense tree planting. It's now the site of Bury Hospital. So that was another rabbit research hole I fell down. Anyway, interesting to see what was going on just south of Bury. Some counties have large 18th century printed county maps. For example, Faden's 1797 map of Norfolk. There's a Hodgkinson 1783 map of Suffolk, and Bedfordshire had the Jeffreys map of 1765. These are smaller in scale than the tithe and enclosure maps, so they don't show you an awful lot of information, but they do kind of show up at the time where there were landscape parks, great and small, but not in much more detail than that. You might be lucky and find some historical documents, such as sales papers or wills, and some of these will contain hand-drawn maps, like the one here. Also, estate maps might have been surveyed and drawn up to show the extent of the land owned by somebody, maybe just to show to his friends, or maybe it is for something like a will or some sort of trust being formed. Sometimes smaller estates, such as this one in Suffolk, it was a land holding owned by Samuel Wardley in 1735. If we zoom in, we can see an orchard. Go back. If we see top left here, we can see an orchard with a sort of formal pattern of trees in it. We can see all the gateways shown and some individual trees. If we zoom in even closer, we can look at the small garden around the house itself. There seems to be a canal with a jetty sort of sticking out over it. So maybe that was for fishing or just sitting and admiring the view. And then just along from that on the right, you can see there's a little building. It was a summer house, or it could have been a barn or something. But yes, not a very well off or a big important site, but we have got some information about the garden here. Hand-drawn maps were drawn up for a reason, and they will show what was important to the owner. So they won't show you everything, but there will be some information you might find of interest. So now looking at paintings and other images of houses and their landscapes. A lot of these may still have remained in the house in question, or they might have moved if the family has relocated to another property or house contents were sold. If you get a chance to visit your park and garden, do ask if there are any pictures hanging in the house. They are often found in upstairs corridors and back entrance halls. But, there's been some quite interesting things pulled out when we've gone to visit landscapes in the past. So these are some of the UK image archives. No, I've gone too far. There we go. These are some of the UK image archives available to search online. The resolutions on the website images may not be good enough for perhaps to print them out, but they're probably good enough for research purposes. If you really need a really good copy of a digital file you find online, they can get quite pricey to buy. So if you can manage without, that's best. Other image archives can be found in county archive websites, local history websites, and many university library archives as well. And you don't have to limit your research to UK archives. There are very good ones shown in other parts of the world, particularly in the US, as shown here. A lot of UK documents and images have been bought by American universities who, on the whole, are very generous about sharing them. And high-resolution images can be found and sometimes downloaded for free. And I have had several contacts with particularly the Huntington Library and the University of Florida, and they were happy to send me copies of images. Sometimes if you're producing a book or something, they said, well, could you send us a copy in return? And that's absolutely fine. And of course, there's always the good old Google image search, which can turn up images from a variety of sources. This is a watercolour by Edward Advino Brooke of the gardens at Stow Langtoft Hall in Suffolk. It was painted sometime in the 1850s or 60s, and it turned up in a Google search and was from a 2011 Sotheby's catalogue. So it's a very well executed painting. It shows gardeners and a wheelbarrow in the centre. There's another gardener potting up a plant in the bottom left and being watched by a member of the family and a child with a hoop. A greenhouse is shown on the far right, and the distant hills are glimpsed through a gap in the planting the far side of the lawn. So when we will talk about next week about looking for views that stretch outside and have been made the most of in a garden, this is the kind of thing we're talking about. So whether this is a true representation of the garden at Stow Langtoft at the time, it's not always possible to say with certainty, as artistic license could have been employed to create an attractive scene. So it was for a book by Brooke. However, in some ways, more useful to garden researchers are amateur paintings and sketches. So this is the painting like this one at Thornham Hall in Suffolk. It's perhaps more believable, and it looks like somebody has faithfully recorded everything they could see. The perspective is all over the place, so we wouldn't say they were an artist as such, but they have put all these lovely details in, like the pineapple finials on the gate piers, potted specimens along the top of the front wall. There are clipped trees in pyramid shapes in Versailles style square planters. And there are clipped standards, you can just about make them out, in more boxes that line either side of the central paths of the front door. So this actually tells us an awful lot about what this garden may have looked like in the 17th century. Then there are engravings. A lot of engravings are likely to show the grander houses and their gardens. This is the extensive formal garden around Wanstead House in Essex. It was the seat of Viscount Castlemaine. It was formerly in Essex, I should say. It is now in the London borough of Redbridge. But as you can see, this landscape was designed to dominate the landscape and show off the high status of its owner. It was probably inspired by the fashionable gardens being visited at Versailles and on the continent. And it's actually hard to believe that these gardens ever existed. I put up an aerial picture here, especially since the building of the golf course. Although Wanstead House has disappeared a long time ago, some of the formal garden features have survived, like the large basin of water you can see in the centre of the photograph. And then there's still you can see rising north from it, you can see an avenue going through that block of trees, and just above it is a sort of grey long smudge. That's the remains of the canal that you can see in the top of the engraving here. So it's hard to believe these landscapes existed, but there's not many of them left that look like this. Rest Park is probably is an exception, which is why it's so special. Not all engravings will be as grand as this Kip and Niff drawing, but there may well be one of your sight if it appeared in a topographical book. That's where someone's travelled around your county in the past and recorded what they've found and drawn some sketches of things. But look out for engravings in old books. Often they're being split up and being sold online, because that's a much cheaper way of getting hold of a copy of these engravings than trying to buy a digital copy from a digital archive. So local archives and collections may have albums or loose photographs from the 19th century or early 20th century. Early books and magazines are also a good source of photographs, as are postcards, early postcards such as this one on the left. And I love this postcard. This is the gloriously Gothic gate lodge at Rendlesham Park in East Suffolk. I mean, it looks like a wedding cake, doesn't it? An amazing building. It's quite set back from the passing road. And so to actually have a look at it, I had a look on the aerial picture, top right, pardon. And I could see the image. You can just see it's like a Y-shaped image to the bottom of that photograph. But above it is this great curved modern development. So I thought, my goodness, what is this? And so more Google searching threw up this Airbnb entry, which had lots of lovely photographs inside and out, and it shows this modern building on the right hand side of the picture with those sort of arched windows, tall thin arched windows in it, and then there's a glass link which connects it to the lodge, which is behind the tree in that bottom photograph. It has lovely glass windows in the modern bit, which overlooks the parkland for people staying. But yes, amazing where this information will turn up from. And then this has to be my very favourite Victorian photograph. It was taken in the early 1870s. It shows a couple and their son sitting in their amazing shell garden. at the back of their very small terraced house in Norwich. So it's a very rare photograph of a backyard garden in a city slum area made up from whatever materials they could get hold of. Now, in this case, most of the materials they've built with is a variety of shells that they obtained from the fishmonger's shop that was around the corner. And according to their descendants, this was actually a very well-known garden in Norwich, and the couple would welcome visitors from quite some distance. And it's so fortunate that this photograph has survived because this whole area was badly affected by the 1912 August floods, and the shell garden was completely washed away overnight. It's on the bend. You can just see at the bottom of the map next to it. There's the bend of the river at the very bottom of that map detail, and the garden is just shaded red, so you can see how close it was. All those houses were badly flooded. So if you love photographs like this, you know, onto a winner. So here we've got a right-hand photograph. This is an aerial photograph of Rendlesham Hall. We've just seen the lodge for. It's taken from the Historic England's Britain from the Air website. It was taken in 1921. The hall is no longer there, so it shows you the grounds that were around the hall. It's got a terrace, and it's got a sort of a lovely sort of semicircular bit that sticks out into the parkland with like flower beds in. And then there seems to be a ha-ha going across the front of that. And there are some specimen trees on the left, and you can see the woodland at the back, which is probably an arboretum. The right-hand photograph was taken from a drone, and it shows very dramatically the ghost of the Victorian parterre gardens at Parchmarks, in the form of Parchmarks at Gawthorpe Hall up in Lancashire, in the height of the summer a few years ago. So the hot summers really encouraged drone flyers and county archaeology groups to send their machines up to take photographs, because you may see all sorts of things that are not visible the rest of the year. These groups might be willing to share their photographs with you, so it's always worth an inquiry. And a very recent source of information over the last 10 years or so, available to garden researchers, has been the development of LiDAR. And if you haven't come across LiDAR before, it stands for Light Detection and Ranging. I'm not going to go quite how complicated in how it all works, but basically a plane flies over and sends out millions of laser readings to the ground level below. And this means it can actually often go through trees and woods and things. There's so many readings going down, you can pick up the contours of the land underneath. So the LiDAR survey started by mapping the coastlines and the river valleys, which were seen as areas prone to rapid change, but more and more areas are being covered each year. The House Prices website is quite a good website to look at for LiDAR images, and we'll put the link in the notes for you for that. But the version shown here is now available on the National Library of Scotland website by choosing the seamless zoomable map layer option that we looked at earlier, and then choosing the LiDAR base layer option as from the drop-down menu that I showed you. And then you can slide that transparency button left and right to switch between the 1880s map and the LiDAR image from today. So this is Gawthorpe Hall again. You can see very clearly they've got a sort of semicircular area with flower beds in, sort of in that top left corner there. You can see that semicircular area. So that's the present day flower beds. Then if there's a square which has the building inside just below it, and then below that you can see just a sort of flat square of land, and that's where those parch marks were seen. So they're not so shown. You can't see them on here. But what you can see is there are paths and ditches in the woods, which don't show up on the maps. And in the walled garden to the far right, which is that sort of, it's not quite square, but it's almost square, you can just see sort of faint lines to show where all the former pathways were. So it's always worth having a look on the LiDAR survey of your site. So when you've exhausted all your desk-based online searches, it's time to go looking for original material, which is where things get really, really exciting. You can go to your local record offices and you can find other archives with material in. So this is a list of the type of items that you might be interested in seeing. The county archive centres for each county tend to have material that's unique and not available elsewhere. So you might be able to see original items, or they might produce copies of those originals if they need to preserve them. There will also be some reference books in there, and there will be item images available to look at on microfilm or microfiche. Local study centres are quite often separate in a separate building or a separate place completely in the county. They are often called heritage centres as well, and they tend to have printed material such as newspapers, leaflets, booklets, digitised images, and printed maps. So it's slightly different sort of split. Sometimes these centres are actually in the same place, which is very helpful. Um, for a particular park or garden, you might like to start by browsing the appropriate county archives website. They give you access to their online catalogue and may have exhibitions, articles, historic maps, and image collections which could be of interest to you. So these are the 6 for the eastern counties, which we're working with the Green Futures. Bedfordshire Archives, which is top left, a very helpful video when they begin, because all these archives, they all work in slightly different ways, so you have to sort of get familiar with your archive. But Bedfordshire have a helpful video on their homepage, which shows you how to look for a personal place in their catalogue. So it'd be nice if everybody else followed suit, really. And if you find that you are actually having problems traversing these catalogues online, then go and visit and ask one of the archivists to give you a brief demonstration. The staff are there to help you, so don't be afraid to ask lots of questions. We have arranged visits for the Eastern County Archives, or to them, in October, which I think Frankie sent out dates to everybody, and I know my Norfolk group know that, where we can look at how each one operates and how to search their catalogues. And then we'll have a behind the scenes tour of their stockrooms, which will give us a really good idea of how documents and maps are stored when you're looking to order them up to the search rooms, and how they're conserved. A good way to find out which archives have materials that you might be interested in is to look at the Access to Archives website. We often refer to it as the A2A. It's managed by the National Archives, and it includes not only the National Archives themselves and their catalogue, but it has links to many other affiliated archives that you can search for material. A search of their database will undoubtedly lead you to many items in your local record office, but also to other archives in your county or beyond. Family papers, as we said before, might have moved to another property with the family and ended up with another set of estate papers in a different part of the country. And this should hopefully shine a light on anything that's elsewhere. A2A has also digitised many wills, so you might be lucky to find one for a person of interest for your site and be able to read it online. Alternatively, you can go to Kew and you can obviously book and go and research in their search room too. Accessing the census returns from home is through the National Archives partners like Ancestry or Find My Past, and therefore not free to search without paying a subscription. However, many libraries, heritage and archive centres have access to census returns, and you may be able to use these for free in the archives there. Before you visit a county archive or heritage centre, or look at their website to find out how to obtain a reader's card, you may be able to order one before you go, or check what items like proof of address that you need. So when you visit, you will have all what you need on arrival to apply for a card. Not all of the archives are using the reader's card system. They will just need to see proof of identity, and their website will tell you what you need. Also, you need to check to see whether you need to book a visit to the archives. So we used to be able to turn up a few years ago, but that doesn't seem to be the case now. So they like to know if you're coming. And before you visit, have a look at the online catalogue, identify a couple of items that you would like to see, and then you can email the archive or fill in their online form to order these in advance. This is because once you arrive in the search room, you'll be asked to fill in order slips for items to be brought down to the search room. These slips are collected every 15 or 30 minutes by staff, and then there is a wait for the item to then arrive on a trolley with the next delivery. So if you haven't ordered a couple of things in advance, you will just have to sit there and wait or look at reference books until your ordered items turn up. If you know you want to see large maps, let staff know in advance as well, because then they will reserve you a larger table. You can take in notebooks, laptops, tablets, and phones, obviously all on silent, into the search rooms, and you must only use pencil. So if you turn up with a pen, you will be probably told to take it out. Take a coin with you, a pound coin, because often there are lockers and you need them for those to leave all your bags, coats, and other items that you don't need in the search room. And as you can see here, it's a bit like exam. I've got a plastic bag with all my things in so that it can be seen that you're not, not attempting to hide anything. They may ask to look in notebooks or inside your laptop. I haven't had that recently, but I have had it in the past. If you want to take photographs of anything, you will need to fill in a photography permit. This records your name, the items you're going to take pictures of, and the purpose of those photos. Archives vary with their permission forms, and some offer a 30-minute or a half day or a whole day permit. You might want to only take a couple of pictures, or you might want to quickly snap every page of an accounts book, for example, so that you can look at them and read them at your leisure at home. And both of these things could be done in a 30-minute permit. And then you can look at the photos when you get back home. As you can normally only have 4 items out on your table at once, if you want to take photos of many more documents, you will need a longer permit and which will allow for the exchange of items by the staff. And just a word of warning, finding out about gardens and their history over time, who designed them, who owned them, how they were used, or who worked in them, can become very addictive. Garden history is a subject that can take you down many avenues, and you can find yourself interested in topics or time periods you'd never really considered before. Many other subjects contribute to garden history. For example, architecture, fine art, horticulture, arboriculture, economics, social history, politics, national and world trade, exploration, and journalism. And you may be able to think of some more. So it's very wide ranging, and you can get really fascinated by all sorts of things that are new to you. And if you do enjoy becoming a garden history detective, and in the future you think you might want to take it to the next level, which is exactly what I did last year, you can go and study for an MA. So the Gardens Trust, in partnership with Buckingham University, run a research master's course in garden history. There is a series of lectures on garden history online through the centuries, and then a schedule of seminars is held in London, quite near Euston Station. And these seminars are on well-known gardens and parks, and often the speakers are the people who own them or manage them, or they are garden history experts on that period. You can choose to take the course over 1 or 2 years, and your research dissertation can be on any topic that you're interested in and your supervisor has approved. So that is exactly what happened to me. And I studied the gate lodges of Norfolk, as I love these little buildings, and they're on the edges of landscape parks. So I'm hoping to carry that on in October. Okay. So happy researching. We are here to help. This has been such a brief whiz through. I know Frankie asked me to ask my background, so I hope I've done that at the end, Frankie, because I forgot at the beginning. Sorry about that. I should say I work with the Norfolk Gardens Trust, so the Norfolk Garden Project volunteers will be used to seeing my face around at the moment. But I am here to support all 6 counties that are taking part in this research. So do email me via the Gardens Trust. I should have put up my email here. It's sally.bate@thegardenstrust.org. And I will try to help you. And if I can't help you, we know lots of people who can. So Frankie, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was a really interesting and brilliantly comprehensive tour of lots of different resources that people can use to begin their garden history journey. I love some of those old photos, the postcards and the hand-drawn maps. What a treat to find that on your journey. Thank you again. I know we're coming up to the hour. We've got some really lovely comments in the chat there. Thank you very much. Just before we leave, I just want to give everyone that poll just to let us know how you found today's webinar, but also I just want to really quickly say that you can book for our future webinars that are happening in the coming months. The next one with Sally Bate is happening on Thursday, the 21st of August. So if you'd like to book that, go on to our events page on the Gardens Trust website, and I'll put a link to that in the chat. You can also go to our project website where we'll be uploading recordings from all of our webinars so far and resources as well. So please do go to that project page too. And all of the links and the presentation from Sally today will be circulated with everybody this afternoon, hopefully. So thank you all very much for coming. I'm just going to start that poll. So please don't leave just yet. Let me figure out how to do that. And I'll check. Sally, are there any questions in the chat?
I'll just finish sharing my screen and I'll stop sharing. Let's have a look. Chat. Ooh, okay. Okay. Never chat GPT. No, thank you.
Yes, no. It's interesting though, wondering how AI
Yes,
might be used in the future of research.
that's true.
Um,
I've not tried it. I wonder if anybody
no,
here has. Yes, it'd be
let
interesting to
us
see
know
what
how you
comes
get
up.
on. Yeah,
Yes, I'm hearing worrying things from people who use it in industry, saying that it is starting to make things up when it doesn't know the answer, which is a bit
definitely.
worrying.
Yeah, I don't think it's very
Yes.
reliable at the moment, but yeah, I've heard
No.
it can be useful in some circumstances when you want to maybe filter out information, but
Yes.
not as a primary source at all.
Okay. Yes, Alexandra's asked a question. Why do we need a photo permit? That's very valid. Um, all the objects that have been deposited in archives have well, upon a time, belonged to somebody, and they are now owned or curated by that archive. And so they fall into two categories. Some have been given to the archive, and therefore they're archive copyright. And the archives are very, they're not going to charge you huge amounts for permission. And I think I'm right in saying, Frankie, that if there is something you desperately need to photograph in there and it's not too much money, we can cover that. So that's true,
Yes,
isn't it? I
that's
think
correct.
from memory in Norfolk, it's only about £5 for half an hour or something, but they obviously they're just keeping an eye on who is taking photographs and what they're using them for. But also there are some, and I know that just when I visited Bedford last, there are some people who have deposited their items into the archives. They haven't given them, so they're very much still that the owner's copyright. And some of them, they actually do not give permission for you to take photographs, or if you do, to use them for anything. So they will. Don't worry about you finding that out. The archive will tell you if a flag comes up on their records. So that's the main reason why. And then obviously your photographs will be added to the bottom of your form, but I'll be talking about that next time. So don't worry why. But it's just really useful when you get home because there's always something that you forgot to write down. Um, and of
Yes.
course, key thing, and I'll be saying this again next time, is you must write down every reference, every catalogue number of everything you look at or every website you've looked at. There's nothing more infuriating than having a piece of information and you can't remember where you store it or found it, or you don't have the correct reference if it's from an archive. I'll talk about that more next time. Okay, let's go
I
down
think
here.
we've got one other question from Chloe. He's doing a PhD at the University of Southampton, and their project is on the impact of flooding on English gardens. Could you please remind me of the name of the garden that got badly flooded in the August
Oh,
floods?
was just known as the Shell Garden.
Ah,
This
yes.
that's the Victorian photograph that I love. So I would have to get in touch with the owner because obviously that's her family's copyright if you wanted to know interest. But I think it was described as the Norfolk tsunami. Um, there was a huge tidal wave came down the river, get the right one, the River Bure, and it washed away all sorts of things, including railway viaducts and all sorts of things. So yes, there will be quite a few gardens that will be um, victim of that. So if that's something you're researching, there may be of interest there, and I'm sure we can find you some more Norfolk information to help. So if you want to get in touch by email, I'll do what I can to help.
Thanks, Sally. Eric, you've got your hand up. You've got
I,
a question.
I have. I sort of half scribbled a question in the chat room and it didn't come across very well. So it was just to ask, will there be a seminar on how you can take that information and the relevant information can be used when we're responding to NSIPs? Because clearly this is linked to NSIPs. And the great
Yes,
stuff you showed there where unfortunately a garden has been obliterated by a built up area, well, the evidence is gone. So it's probably not very relevant to an NSIP, but elsewhere it might be. So it's just really understanding what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, and how it can be
yes.
dealt with.
Well, I will talk a bit more next time. It kind of goes into next talk.
Good.
This project, we are not expecting you to require to respond to NSIPs. So this information, we hope, is going to go on, which we intend it to go on the historic environment records for each county. And in that way, all developers plus Historic England will be able to pick up the information that you found and be able to use it in their responses. So that's how this project is going to work. If you are going to respond privately to an NSIP, then obviously that's your choice. You just cannot quote this particular project because we're very that's where the line is being drawn. So there's nothing to stop you using that information as a private person. You just can't say that it's part of the green futures. Is that clear? Frankie, do you want to explain that anymore? Because obviously you've been dealing with Historic England and know what the problems are with this.
Yes, so Eric, just to kind of go back a little bit, we are going to have a webinar in, I think it's September, is it October, on sharing your research. So that will be how to upload it to the Historic Environment Record, maybe include it in local lists and other places where you can share your information. And that's where your research will be used and looked at potentially by developers in the future. So yeah, exactly as Sally says, you won't be responding to NSIPs directly, particularly as that process can take years, so you may not hear back. We won't be officially doing that on this project, but you as a private individual can always look into NSIPs in your area and how you get that information to developers. But no, on this project, we're just going to be uploading your research to various different platforms and making it available for all developers in the future, actually, not just NSIP related developments. So it will be really useful for lots of different things in the future, hopefully. Does that kind of answer your question, Eric?
It does. Great, thank you. The only thing there will be how quick it's added to the databases, and
Yes.
that is a critical thing because the NTIP I'm
Yes.
interested in is live, and the statutory consultation will probably start in January. And they've already been collating information. We want to make
Yes.
sure that if we find any additional information, they are made aware of it. But
Absolutely.
I'll ask the question when you come to sharing, and that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, time is really of the essence, and the sooner that we can share your research on those different platforms, the better. So yeah, we'll give you some more guidance on that in due course. But yeah, thanks for that question.
We could just say we've got Twigs Ways with us. I don't know whether you want to
Yes.
unmute yourself, Twigs, and just give us a wave. So the MA course that I mentioned at Buckingham University, Twigs is the lady who is the course leader, course director. What do you call yourself, Twigs?
I call myself program director, but I'm not altogether sure I'm meant to. I probably am course director. I just tend to call myself garden historian, actually, which is fine. So yeah, and I've just posted it up. Of course, it probably got buried in loads of wonderful questions from loads of other people. But I did actually just post up our link on Eventbrite for the open evening for prospective MA and PhD students so they can grill us on what the MA and the PhD is all about. So yeah, that was great. Thank you for giving us a mention, Sally.
It's okay. It's good to see
and
you.
indeed, Frankie as well. Nice to see you. We've been chatting behind the scenes as well. Well, I popped in, Sally, because I stayed for the whole hour. It was riveting. I've never had so much information in such
that was the condensed version, Twigs.
I know.
Condensed.
I know, but it was just amazing. And I thought if I delivered this much information in an hour, which Sally has just done in a most structured, wonderful way, mine would have been delivered at about 300 miles an hour and everybody would have been totally lost. And yours was so wonderful and so structured and so clear. I'm really, really impressed. So, and I was thinking, how can I get this woman to come and talk for an hour to the students actually as an introduction? So I don't have to do it. So that would be great because you're far clearer than I am. So that's
okay.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming, Twigs. It's great that you're here.
I think some of my students might be here as well. Actually.
Oh, excellent.
I can see a couple of my students are on.
Excellent. Oh, that's
so
good.
Yeah,
good
obviously I haven't covered it as well as you have because they're on here. So that's great.
That's brilliant.
You can't get too much information, can you?
You can't get too much information. I know they're all saying they want to revisit the first year's lectures all over again.
Exactly.
They want to do it again. So yeah,
yes.
Great.
Okay, and there was one other. I did see somebody about a metropolitan. I can't find it. Can you find it? Yes. I'm not quite sure about the question. So, would that lady would like to just unmute and just ask? I can.
It might have been relating to research or possibly
research in metropolitan areas. I mean, basically, use all the information I've.
That's me, I think.
Hi, Jackie.
It's just that I'm in Greater Manchester, and in Tameside, half of it was Lancashire, half of it was Cheshire. There isn't a garden trust for Greater Manchester, as far as I know.
No.
We don't fit into a county system.
No.
So
you'd have to talk to both the others. You'd have to talk to Lancashire and to so it would be Barbara in Cheshire and
but surely Greater
Elaine,
Manchester is a large area with significant parks, so there ought to be something within it. But
yes,
the frustrating thing with someone perhaps who has a responsibility, but it's never something that sort of comes up in these sort of talks. It's very
no. Manchester has come up in the past. Yeah, Manchester has come up with a view to the fact that there perhaps ought to be a Manchester Gardens Trust in the same way that London has one.
Yeah.
The trouble is, we just need someone to run it.
Yes.
So if you know of anybody,
money, isn't it? But
well, if there's a group of people who would
searching for information is a bit of a nightmare, if you see what I mean, because you don't know
which way to go.
Whether to go to your own metropolitan borough for sources, to Cheshire or Lancashire or wherever.
Well, that's where A2A might help you. So if you put in what you're looking for into A2A, that may then point you in the right archives in the right direction to go and have a look in. So I would try that first.
Yeah. And it's very difficult to know if anyone's ever tried. I mean, I'm interested in a site that is now a cemetery. But I don't know if it's ever been registered in the way that.
Well, it can be on the look on Historic England's map. Search the map, find Manchester, zoom into that area. If it's shaded green, it's on the register. Right. So quite a few cemeteries are, if they're older ones, particularly. Yeah. And others, of course, will be there'll be conservation areas. They'll be protected by all sorts of other things. There'll be scheduled monuments, maybe. So,
I mean, this started as a park for a house.
Yes, well, go and have a look at the old map. See how the changes and when it all happens.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
But do get in touch if you need some more help.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your question, Jackie, and thank you to everyone for coming today. I know we've overrun slightly, but it's because we've had such a brilliant session. So thank you again, Sally, and we hope to see you all next time at Sally's next webinar. On the 21st of August, where we will learn how to go out there and actually record historic parks and gardens. So we will see you all there. Thanks very much, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.